Hello?
Hello, Jughead. This is Archie. Come over right away. It's a matter of life or death.
Oh, relax, Archie.
Attention, all true believers. Marvel Comics is on the air.
A friend of the unfortunate, enemy of criminals. In reality, Dan Garrett, a rookie patrolman, loved by everyone but suspected by none of being the Blue Beetle.
Boys and girls, your attention, please. Presenting a new exciting radio program featuring the thrilling adventures of an amazing and incredible personality. Faster than an airplane, more powerful than a locomotive, impervious to bullets.
Up in the sky, look!
It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman!
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We are here at the end of the year, and we got an excellent guest for you guys, so stick around. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Kickin' It with Henry. This isn't the live shopping show. It is the live interview show. You guys got a glimpse of my dirty background over here. So we got a nice clean background here. So I'm kind of looking all weird here with it. But here we are. And we have an amazing guest for you guys to chat with today. This is one of the most, if I had to give somebody in the independent comics community like a person of the year, this is the person who I would give that that title to. And it is my honor to welcome Mr. Fish Lee to Kickin' It.
What is up, man? I am touched. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's good to be here, man.
You've had a pretty impressive year, man. I mean, like, you know, our paths have crossed a couple times, but just I have to say, like, one of the highlights of the year for me, from like what I've seen from you, is just how you've been hitting TikTok and other, you know, live stream platforms, and just really doing an amazing job of promoting yourself. But before we get into all that, why don't you tell us all who you are and what you do?
I am Mr. Fish of Mr. Fish Comics. I was once called the fastest working man in indie comics, and I took that name and ran with it, buddy. I am right now working on my 107th book in 5 years that I've worked on. The majority of those, I have done the pencils, inks, colors, letters, the whole 9 yards. You hand me a script, I give you a finished book. I did 21 books this year, like 478 pages of artwork for books, along with other stuff like some other things I didn't count, like pinups and character illustrations and stuff. But 478 pages I drew this year, over 21 books that I worked on, and published like 5 of my own, I think, and like 6 mini comics. I've been busy.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. So but here's the thing. You've worked on a bunch of comics, but I want to know more about the independent projects that you've worked on, because you've done a lot of stuff. So, but the independent projects that you worked on that are yours. So you just launched you published your own creator-owned series this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's been something that you've been working on for a long time. You and I have been chatting on it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's something you put a lot of energy and focus into. Tell us about that.
I've worked on several projects now of my own. Like, I started 6 years ago with a comic book, T-Man and Hyperstrike, about a superhero team with Tourette's and ADHD, like I grew up with, trying to help inspire the kids I was working with as an online advocate to see the heroes in themselves and not let the world beat them down with, you know, ideas that you're a weirdo or whatever. Like, our Tourette's might make us tick, but it also makes us awesome. And I wouldn't be able to knock out as many books as I knock out if my brain wasn't wired a little bit crooked. And then I got so busy doing everybody else's books after that that it was a while before I got to go back to my own creator-owned stuff, like Green Zone Life in the Blocks and my Fishtails anthology and The Mighty Caw, the Cro-Magnon. But the series that I'm super excited to have been working on, like you were saying, I've been working on the story that is now Alice Lost in Wonderland for 30 years. Like, it was the first idea I had that was truly my idea, and taking all the concepts that I love and turning it into a new story, not just a knockoff of the Hulk or a knockoff of the X-Men like I did when I was a kid, but this was mine. And, what started out as a power fantasy kind of story when I was a kid, over the years has evolved to include like all the different stages that we go through as we grow up, and who you are as a child when you think you know it all, or who you are when the world kicks you in the teeth and teaches you that you don't, who you are as a wise elder, who you are when you get pushed to the limit and do things that you regret. The way you can try not to make all the mistakes that your parents made, and you can work so hard that you go all the way around the barnyard and come back to the same place and make a whole new set of mistakes, and how you could try and do everything right with your kids and not make the mistakes your parents made and still have your kids hate you. And generational trauma and all this stuff. The story got so much richer over the years than it started out when I was younger. So I'm glad I had 30 years to marinate on this story, and it was one of the greatest joys of my life to actually get to send it out to people, finally see it be published. My son, Barely, who just turns 21 on Christmas, has listened to this story his entire life. He got to help color the book. He colored like half of it. And you'd be hard pressed to tell which pages he did, which pages I did. And getting to work with him on a project he's listened to his whole life was really awesome for both of us. And he's made me really proud. He did a great job on it.
It's interesting. I think so much of our work is personal. It's our personal stamp and imprint on the world. Like Warline is definitely that for me. It's anybody who knows me personally will be able to know what I'm going through and read that book and be like, oh, I get what he's talking to here. And it's interesting how you mentioned this too with Elson and everything you're doing with that. So let's take it a step back. So what was the thing that made you say, this is the book that I want to, pursue for the next, however many years before I can get it made and actually see it through? And why Alice? What is it about Alice in Wonderland that was like,
the Alice in Wonderland aspect is relatively recent. Like, that got added into the story. Originally, it was a story about this time traveling barbarian guy. Like, what would happen if you just gave anybody, like say Conan, a sword that could cut through reality, and he could travel time and space and go wherever he wanted. So I could have adventure stories, I could have stories from my D&D game in there, I could have sci-fi stories and Blade Runner type stories, whatever I wanted to do, because he could go anywhere. And as a kid, I was like, well, of course, you're not going to just go around being an altruistic good guy. You're going to be selfish, and you're going to do things for yourself, and you're going to get in trouble, and you're going to have people coming after you. And all of a sudden, all of these villains and stuff chasing him, and all this time travel nonsense back and forth was what fascinated me when I was younger. But as time went on, and like I struggled to become a father, and we adopted and all this stuff, the idea of him adopting a child came in, and seeing how many people around me that I knew like had kids way too young when they were in high school and stuff, and were really crappy parents because they weren't an adult themselves yet, much less ready to be a parent. And so the idea of adding that aspect on, of like, he gets this kid that he takes under his wing, and he tries really hard to be a parent, but he's not very good at it, and he doesn't know how to do it very well, and he didn't have very good examples. So eventually she grows up to kind of hate him and become like a villain in his life and want to tear him down because she hates him and blames everything on him. And it became this really interesting story. And then I was talking with a friend of mine maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, and he was asking me, like, where do you come up with all these story ideas, and I was like, dude, you could come up with a story from anywhere. Like, take nursery rhymes and, set them in a different place. Like, what would Little Boy Blue be like if it was on an alien planet and, the sheep in the meadow was the size of a kaiju and, he uses this horn to control it? Like, what would that be? You can make a really interesting story out of anything. And then just off the top of my dome, I was like, what if Alice was a wandering Ronin samurai in this interdimensional rift between worlds called Wonderland, and all the crazy creatures from Wonderland are actually aliens from other planets that have trapped in this rift? That could be a fascinating story. And then I couldn't get that out of my freaking head. And I just kept thinking about these images of Alice and how awesome she would be. And I was desperate to tell, my time-traveling barbarian story, and I really wanted to tell this Alice story, and I was debating on like what the next project I was going to do is, and we were on the road to a con and my wife was driving, so my imagination's running wild, and then it hits me. I was like, I want to do both of them for different reasons. I was like, but if I take his daughter and just cut her out, as much as I like that character, and if I put Alice in her place and I turn the story and tell it from Alice's point of view, then I get all of the cool stuff at once. I get to tell it from her perspective. I get to put a sexy girl on the cover, which ain't a bad idea. I get to make a badass female protagonist be my main character, which I'm a big fan of. And and then we get to see it more from her point of view, like how she got damaged along the way, why she holds it against him, why she hates him, why she wants to take him down. And then all of a sudden, all the characters that I had made up for a long time suddenly kind of started falling in place in the Wonderland narrative. But because it's an interdimensional rift, I'm bringing in all of the public domain stuff. So like she's got the Tin Man by her side as her sidekick, and a bounty hunter that I've had forever that's like, a junk cyborg is now the Scarecrow. And, all of these characters started filling roles, and the white-haired barbarian running through time and jumping through portals becomes the White Rabbit. And it's a great name because he's always on the run and he's always being chased. And, everything just suddenly fit so interestingly, and I loved it. And then I started to run with it, and now here we are. It's going to be my main creator-owned thing after this. I'm finishing up Green Zone issue 4 to finish that first arc, which it'll go live in February on Kickstarter. And then after that, it's going to be Alice from here on out for a while.
So, Fish, one thing that I envy about you is that you're able to have so much more output because of the fact that you draw and you're able to write and do everything together. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that I'm seeing that we both have in common is that it takes time for our ideas to marinate. Oh, but yeah. On the production side, you have a major advantage in the sense that you can put out more because you are doing a lot on your own. What's that process like? Because I'm honestly kind of jealous of you. I wish I could draw.
I get that a lot.
I draw like little stick figures, booting.
I keep saying, man, all you got to do is lock yourself in a room for 40 years and do nothing but draw, and you'll get there, man. That it's not that hard. That's what I did. I just hyper focused and didn't do anything else.
But I have to say though, there is a level of talent that comes with that,
Oh yeah, like if my brain wasn't wired the way it is, I wouldn't be as creative as I am. I wouldn't spit out as many brand new ideas all of the time. My biggest problem is I'm always coming up with new ideas and I want to chase down those rabbit holes, but I can't and get the stuff done that I'm working on today. It's the curse of my ADD brain. If my brain wasn't misfiring all the time from the Tourette's, I probably wouldn't be as fast as I am, which even for people that are just drawing books, I'm fast usually. Like I've knocked out entire books in 12 days before. I once penciled a book in 28 hours, which drives me up the freaking wall because I took a nap that day. And if I didn't take a nap, I would have hit 24 hours. But, it took me less than 24 hours, but I can't say that because then you're going to think my OCD won't let go. But yeah, I'm quick, which helps. My art, unlike a lot of people that, came of age in the 90s, I don't fill the entire page with nothing but cross hatching. So that saves me a lot of time. And I went back to scratch and retaught myself how to draw a couple of times along the way. And once specifically because like I was trying real hard to be like a mix between a Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee clone. And then I realized like if they want Todd McFarlane or Jim Lee, they're going to hire them, or some of the guys that were much better specific clones of them than I am. So I was like, I went back from scratch and retaught myself how to draw from the ground up so that my style looked like me and didn't look like, tips and tricks I was getting from somebody else. And in the process, my artwork came out a lot more simple. And so it's a lot more about line weight and spot blacks and stuff than it is, super crazy feathering, cross hatching, which saves me time, which lets me go faster. I had to start working digitally because of my Tourette's, because at the time my hands just got way too shaky to be able to like have a brush and an open bottle of ink anywhere near me anymore. Like that just wasn't safe. And so I had to learn to work digitally, which was a bit of a learning curve. But then once I started to figure it out, and I've always been, a computer minded guy anyway, I started to learn lots of little things that could really help speed me up. And then once I realized, since I'm not working in permanent black ink on a piece of paper and there's, no way to fix it if I make a big mistake, I don't have to get my pencils as tight as I used to have to get them before I took a brush to a piece of paper. And so now sometimes when I pencil a book that I know really well, a lot of the characters might just be rough shapes with like a cross on their face for where the face is going to be. And then I'll draw that in ink, and it's easier for me to fix it if I make a mistake. And that shaves hours off the process. And, lots of little things like that I've picked up along the way has just really sped up my process and made things go a lot faster. And, to the point that sometimes I overbook myself and I'm like, oh yeah, I can get all this stuff knocked out in a month, and then realize I just, promised 3 months worth of work that I got to get done. It's a bit of a problem sometimes.
Well, do you ever feel, I'm assuming do you ever feel like really secluded being, the guy who does everything, like not having anybody that you collaborate with necessarily, but being the guy that's just like stuck with the story and the art, is it a large burden to carry? It's easy for me to be envious because the grass is always greener, so to speak. But
I'm envious of writers. Like I'm envious of the guys that like just write and have to worry about like the Kickstarter campaign and getting social media posts and stuff done. Like I could be so much more effective at running my Kickstarters if I didn't have to do everything by myself for my books. And I'm envious of the guys that, just write it and hand it off to somebody, and then you've got weeks or months to prep other stuff while somebody else is drawing it. Oh my gosh, if I had an inker and a colorist that I could depend on for that stuff, I would be so excited.
Yeah, until you got to pay them. Then it's
yeah. I mean, that's part of the problem. Like I hire a flatter now because she sped me up so much that it's worth the money that I spend on her for that.
I didn't realize this. It took me a very long time to understand how much a flatter can make a difference with the entire coloring process. It's like night.
I thought it was ridiculous. I mean, up until the point that I got in a bind and I needed to hire somebody just for this one little 5-page job because I was in a bind, and the person that was going to color this project for me dropped out on me, and I was in a big hurry, and I was trying to do this really cheap for a friend who couldn't afford to pay very much for his book. And so anyway, so I got in a bind and I needed to get it done quick, so I hired this flatter to do these pages, and I knocked those colors out like that. So the next book I had scheduled, I had, like 2 months scheduled out to illustrate this book. And at the time, I would page by page, I would pencil and letter a page, send it off for approval. Then I would ink that page. Then I would color that page, send it off for approval, and then I would start on the next page. And I could maybe, if I'm lucky and somebody can check stuff and not like have to wait till after work, like the client I was working with, I could probably get 2 or 3 pages done a day if I was really lucky. And at that route, but I decided I was going to hire the flatter and see how it went on this book. And I got done with the whole book in 12 days. And all of a sudden I had a month and a half free and I was paid. And I was asking my wife, like, I don't know what to do. Do I like look for another book to do or what? And she's like, no, you do one of your own books. And that's how Green Zone came about. I knocked Green Zone out from like writing the script to having it finished in like 3 weeks in the free time that I had from that, because she sped me up so much. And I use her all the time now, to the point that I'm spoiled, and I gripe and complain the whole time if I have to do a pinup by myself and I can't afford to pay her to flat it, or I don't have time to wait on it because I need to hurry up and get it done. I'm like, God, I don't want to flatten this like a savage myself. I'm so spoiled. She does such a good job. And I did not realize how much time I spend just selecting around this bicep over and over and over again, to color it and then shade it and then highlight it. And when I can have that reference layer to just click on, boom, it's selected. It's amazing. It really does save a lot of time. I thought it was a joke. I will never go back.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. So we're gonna get more into the marketing side of that in a minute here. But I guess before we get into that, my first question would be, how have you gone about getting your work out there outside of Kickstarter? Like, you mentioned Kickstarter a little bit, but I mean, what are your other methods of actually getting work out into, the eyes of the public? What has been your go-to method?
Sharing stuff on Facebook was my first go-to. Like, that's what got me started in indie comics, sharing my artwork and sharing posts and making friends with other people that were interested in comics. And then I got my first gig inking a little book, and I made friends with the letterer on there, who turned out to be Eric Bennett, who's one of my best friends now. And he started hiring me for some stuff and sharing it with his friends, and like, oh man, look how cool this is. But what really got me my first real gigs was he hired me for a little short 8-page backup story for an issue of Power Company. And I was using some of his friends' characters. I'd never drawn these guys before, so he's sending me references, and I worked really hard to make sure like people were the right height to each other when they're in perspective and standing, way away from each other. Put a lot of work into making this thing look right. He was amazed. It looks great. It's about ready to go to print. And then one of the other creators realized that I had missed the little side belts on 5-Star's costume, and I'd never drawn 5-Star before. And he's like, yeah, I mean, they're missing, but don't worry about it. It's done. You did a great job, man. For what I paid, this is amazing. And I looked at it. I was like, no, it was clearly in the references. I missed it. So I went back and I fixed every panel for 8 pages and redrew it and put those belts on there because it was supposed to be on there. Like, it was my mistake. I messed up. And the fact that I was willing to go back and fix something that I had messed up, that got me my first gig drawing 5-Star. That got me my gig drawing Sentinels, which I think I've drawn like 9 issues of now, maybe. That kicked off my career in doing full books for other people, just because they saw how easy I was to work with and that I took my job seriously, and I want it to look as good as it possibly can. It was actually bumping into Eric Larson at a con that cemented that for me, because I showed him some of my work and he very politely told me I sucked. And I had all kinds of excuses for why, this wasn't good enough for that. Well, this guy was a jerk and that guy wasn't paying very much. And he's like, none of that matters. the customer is not going to know any of that. You're not going to be standing over their shoulder while they read the book, explaining why all these excuses why your art doesn't look good. Like, they don't care. They see your name and your artwork, and that's that. That's your reputation. And doesn't matter if the guy's a jerk. Doesn't matter if they weren't paying much. You need to do the best job you can in the time you have. And I went home so pissed, and I dwelt on it, and I realized he was right, and that made me even madder. And so I committed. I was never going to make that mistake again. And voila, I've built a career now off of people knowing they can count on me to do a good job. But yeah, man, sharing stuff on Facebook was the main way that I got out there. TikTok has been real helpful in getting my stuff out in front of new eyes. Facebook doesn't want to do that as much, but TikTok is really good about that. TikTok is really kind of suppressive on letting you lead people other places. Like, they don't want you to mention Kickstarter or Patreon or anything. Like, they'll really suppress your videos. They used to cut the audio out of my videos if I messed up and said Kickstarter.
It seems like just something they do randomly, which honestly kind of defeats the purpose of using these platforms to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they cut stuff out and they bring it back. I mean, like lately, I've been using the same intro for my show for the last 4 years. And just this week, I started getting, notifications from Facebook that like, oh, you're in violation of a copyright infringement. I'm like, first off, when I went online and I typed it up, I was looking for non-copyright music, that I could use license free. And now it's an issue, but it was an issue for the experience too, which is why they actually ended up having to change my intro. But they like cut out the audio for a second, and it's like it's such an arbitrary thing. It's almost as if like they just are, for some weird reason, they just don't want our stuff to be heard.
I'll get copyright bans for music that I'm paying for the copyright on.
Yeah.
But because they don't own the copyright for it, they're assuming I can't either. And so there's no arguing with it because you're arguing with bots most of the time. But yeah, like when I started originally doing a cartoon about my life with Tourette syndrome, a friend of mine convinced me to make a Facebook page for that cartoon, Tourette's Life, which is now my Mr. Fish Comics page. And it real quickly got up to like, 4,000 people following it. And back in the day when I would post anything on there, at least, 3,000 people would at least have it come across their screen now. Like now, I can't get 200 people to see anything that I post there, no matter how often I post, no matter how regularly. Even if I paid to promote a post, which I think is the big problem, because once you pay, they only want you to pay. But even if I pay, I'm lucky if I get 400 people to see it. I'm never going to get the nearly 5,000 people that followed that page to see what I'm up to. They're never going to see it. So there's no real point. There's no motivation for me to continue putting serious effort into trying to build that page when Facebook isn't going to honor that, at least with TikTok, they always show my stuff to new viewers. Even if only 200 people see a video, usually, 60 or 80% of those were new viewers and not necessarily the people that follow me, but they're showing it to new people all the time. And I always get some new people following me every day over there, which, I'm going to hate to lose that with whatever happens in the future, but it's been a fun ride. But there's always going to be another platform to have to figure out and someplace else to go and, another avenue to figure out, whether it be, YouTube or Blue Sky or, whatever comes next.
Oh, of course. So let's go into this a little bit. You've been doing this thing that I think was really cool. You're wearing sunglasses that say Mr. Fish on there, and you've almost adopted this persona.
Oh, man, I've got them here somewhere.
So, there's one thing to get advice from different comic creators who have made it, getting your artwork ripped apart by Eric Larson. It's like we all kind of go through this process of getting chastised by those who have made it. That's kind of like your
Mhm.
rite of passage. And it's a necessary thing. I almost think it's a test. It's almost kind of like hazing in a way. It's like, can you handle feedback?
Mhm.
Can you grow from negative feedback? Can you actually have someone tell you that you suck and that you're never going to make it? And can you grow from that? I
That's
personally,
a hard thing. Like I've been
yeah,
making my living as an artist since junior high, and it's been my main job. I've worked a couple of gas stations and uh, worked third shift at Walmart stocking toys for Christmas one year, but everything else has been off the back of artwork. And so I had to get over real quick that this is a piece of my soul, and if you say it stinks, then you're cursing me. And you know, no, it's a piece of artwork for pay. If you don't like it, I need to fix it so I get paid. Like I'm doing something for you. I want you to be happy with it. If I can have fun doing it too, that's awesome. But drawing's better than digging a ditch, man. I will take that all day long. I'll take hand cramps and neck pain over a broken back out in the sun all day digging ditches, man. I'm happy.
you know what? That's a great attitude to have. Like to be able to be able to have that attitude, I think is really important. And like when it comes to the actual like getting that aspect of it, that's only I think one side of the job when you're in independent comics. The other side of it is you got to now be your own. You got to be your own like marketing guy. You got to be your front man. You're your guy.
Oh man.
If you can't do that, which a lot of these guys honestly have a hard time doing because it's a
Hmm.
pretty isolating job. Like you're sitting
It
behind.
is.
You in particular, you're writing and drawing. You're by yourself all the time. But like here I am talking to you, and you're like one of the most outgoing people ever. I mean, when I saw you at C2E2, just the way you were so accommodating to everybody and so kind, especially at the heroic awards. You also told me some of the stories you had gone through. It was just like you had a really strong understanding of how to be your own frontman. Where does that come from? What are your big inspirations for that? Because I think that's the one thing they don't teach you in comics. They can break you down for your artwork, but they can't tell
Oh,
you how to be your biggest advocate. And
that is, it's funny. It's really funny that you asked that because it took me a while to figure it out. And I only recently, like in the last couple of years, really totally figured out why, like, I was scared of the idea of getting on TikTok because, like, if I have my way, I would just keep my head down drawing stories all day. Somebody else could be the front man. Somebody else can be the Stan Lee. I'd be perfectly happy being the Jack Kirby and just keep my head down knocking out pages. But, that's not the way it is. So I had to step out there and do it. And it came pretty naturally. And I've always done well with jobs like being in the public eye and stuff. And, even though I hate it because like I'm autistic and I'm introverted and I would rather just, like stick to the stuff that I like and stick where I'm comfortable. But the funny thing about it is because I grew up undiagnosed autistic and I had to figure out how to fit in the world and how to communicate with other people and how to, not be alone in a room by myself all the time. I ended up creating a mask like most autistic people do to put on in front of other people. And I was raised in the 80s, so both of my parents were working all the time. After the divorce, my mom was working like 100 hours a week sometimes. So I was pretty much raised by TV. So I built my mask off of people on TV. And so when it came time to get in front of a camera or stand in front of people, like it was real easy to take the mask that I created over all these years and just turn it up a little bit. And then all of a sudden it's, hey, I'm your Uncle Fish. I love you. Hey, you like indie comics? I got some of the most independent comics in the world you're ever going to see. And, it's just, it's easy to turn it up just a little bit. And I'm that pitch man on TV because it's, there's a lot of, MacGyver and stuff like that all got cobbled together, and the fawns and stuff to try and make this personality that I wore, to fit in with people on the outside. And and kind of like armor to keep people at bay so they didn't get close enough to get to the real me and, potentially hurt my feelings or something, because everything's turned up to 11. And, like, it's funny, like with the glasses, I just did it on a whim for one of Tony Clapper's Kickstarters for 5-star, and we started this whole wrestling bit. And I never thought the years I spent imitating the Macho Man would come in handy when I'm doing a promo, brother. And let me tell you something, just like it was so much fun. And next thing you know, I've got a costume and stuff, and I'm walking around like, oh, you think you know who the Mighty Claw is? Well, let me tell you something, and it just became this whole thing, which was a fun new way to promote it. A couple of people hated it, but more often than not, people loved it. And, got some attention and got some more people out there. And if it'll get somebody to go check out the book, I'm all about giving it a shot, because I think the books are pretty good. I like them. And I'm one of the hardest critics on my own personal stuff. I got the rose-colored glasses knocked off a long time ago, and I learned to quit looking at my artwork as I envisioned it to be, or I hoped it would be someday, and look at it for what it actually is right now. And sometimes some of my friends will get on to me saying, oh, you're being too hard on yourself. No, your stuff's amazing. I'm like, no, my stuff is good. Like, I would say I'm solid mid-tier out of all the professional comic book artists. Like, there's people out there that are way better, more interesting than me, that people are going to pay, $1,000 for, a pencil and ink page, to do a pinup or a cover or something. I'm not that guy, but I do good work. I do consistent work. I'm fast. I hit deadlines. I'm good at emotion and motion, and making sure that you know where you are from one scene to the next, and there's not some big crazy jump and you don't know where we are and how did we get there. Like, I'm really good at the storytelling aspect of it, and I put out good stuff and I hit deadlines. I'm better than a whole lot of people, and I'm not as good as a whole lot of other people. I'm really comfortable with where I am. I'm proud of how far I made it, because I didn't used to be good enough to be a professional at this, and now I am. And, I'm proud of how far I come, and I don't have any crazy aspirations that I'm going to be the best in the world. I just want to be good. I want to tell my stories, man. I want to tell stories that move people, that make people cheer. I want people to yell out the sound effects when stuff happens. I want you to cry, not just because a character died, but I want you to cry because my character's heart's broken. I want you to cry because they're sad. Like, that's one of my goals as a writer. Like, that's something I really want to hit, I have certain milestones that I want to hit, and that's one of them. It's making people cry.
No, that's but that's where you want to be. And I think what I'm sensing from you is energy, and it's a positive energy, and it's not an easy thing to have. Like, I think this is something that a lot of creators tend to they're cursed with, because they put all that energy into the work so that they don't have to put it into that, because that's the extra step, right? It's like, like, once your book's out there, a lot of, and it's also kind of like how the comic book industry is built. I came across this video the other day. It was like a short of Harlan Ellison talking about how the comic book industry sucked when he was during the 80s and 90s. And he was like, there's only 2 games in town, and if DC doesn't want you, then you're stuck with Marvel. And he was, he called out what's his face, Jim Shooter, and said, he's got Jim Shooter, like, he bullies the other creators, and it's like, no one values the work. You just put these things out there. They're comics. People throw them off to the side, and that's it. But it's not like that for us. I think that, and especially in your case, like, you're truly invested in what you're doing with your comics. Yeah. You want people to feel something. You don't want this to just be some, asswipe that, people buy for 65 cents. You're putting real value, real story into all this. And
I'm pouring my heart and soul.
Unapologetically yourself. Yeah, but you're unapologetically you. And I think that's an important aspect to it. It's like, I think a lot of creators also have this, ambition of wanting to be the best, and that is a great
I
aspiration.
want to be remembered, because even the best, like everybody might remember Marvel, but are you going to remember the thousands of stories that you read from them? But like, I want people to remember my stories. I want my story to have an impact and touch your heart. I want to make you laugh. I want to make you cry. I want to make you yell out sound effects and stuff. And I want you to yell out, "Oh crap," when you turn the page. Like, what's going to happen next? Like, that's what I want. I want you to enjoy this story. I want you to have fun the way I have fun watching my favorite movies and reading my favorite books. And like, that's the litmus test for me on a indie comic particularly. If it gets me yelling out sound effects, and if it gets me yelling, "Oh no," at some point, and laughing out loud, stuff like that, like, this is on my must buy every time pile. This is on my top creator list. This is the one that I'm going to be bragging about every time I get on air and say, "Hey, this dude makes really awesome books. You need to go check this out." um that's what I look for, and that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. Everybody's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be bigger than Marvel and DC." No, you're not. I mean, you're not. I don't care if you get a Netflix deal and you get 3 seasons of a show off of your comic. You're not going to be bigger than Marvel and DC. That's built on the backs of decades from hundreds or thousands of creators that have worked on this thing and built this giant monolith, and it's built on a fan base of thousands and thousands of people that have been reading these books for generations now. You're not going to get that on your indie book. But you could have 1,000 fans that loyally love your stories and want to cosplay as your characters and are coming up with their own ideas and fan fiction and stuff, like, that's freaking awesome, man. That's what I want to do. I want as many people as I can get to see my stories and enjoy them, but I have I have no desire to try and dethrone Marvel and DC. They're doing their own thing. And my stuff's weird and unique and sci-fi and different, and it's not mass-produced superhero stuff. I'm doing other weird things because I'm weird. I like that kind of stuff.
Well, I think that's kind of. I don't think we need to do the Marvel and DC stuff. That's already being done, and it's it's already out there. If you want to do the Marvel and DC stuff, you want to go, then that's what you should be doing. You should be trying to get in with those companies and doing.
Like, it'd be fun to work on a Spider-Man book, but there's so many people already wanting to try.
You and I have the same thought. Like, I also would love to be on a Spider-Man book, but
there's so many people that draw Spider-Man better than I do and deserve that shot better than I do and want it more than I do. I want to tell my own stuff, and I draw my stuff better than anybody else is going to. So,
right.
Let me do that, and you do that.
I think that's the other aspect to it too, is that no one's going to do it the way you do it. There's something to be said about that.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So as we're kind of like coming into the home stretch of this interview, I kind of want to know a bit more about your 2025 plans, because you don't, based on our conversation so far, you have not shown that you have any signs of slowing down anything that you're doing in comics. And 2025, I think, is going to be a very interesting year. And I think that, now that we're coming out of this post-election era, like, things are, kind of, I don't want to say stabilizing, but they're just, we're not in a big election year. So, things are going to kind of stabilize in that regard. And I think a lot of people are going to be really clamoring for escapism. So can you give us a little bit of a hint and maybe walk us through some of your plans for 2025? What some of your goals are, what comics you plan to release, all that kind of stuff.
I would absolutely love. My goal for the last 2 years has been to transition over to doing exclusively my own work. And the first year I made it 7 months out of 12 on just my own stuff, which was amazing. I missed my goal of 12 months, but I was really proud to hit 7 months of surviving on my own stuff. This year, I'd have to actually really hardcore go back and look at it. I think I've probably done 6 months of my own stuff this year. It's probably about half and half with client work. If I wanted to relax and take it easy and have some time off, maybe not work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, I would go back to doing other people's books, and I could book myself up right now for the rest of the year with prepaid work and have 2025 done right now. If I was willing to go back and do that. As it is, I'm having to start telling people no that are like, hey, for next year, I'm like, actually, I'm already booked up with about all I can fit in. In February, we launch issue 4 of Green Zone, and then soon after, we'll be doing the trade, which will have all the combined issues and extra side stories and other stories that have been published in other places with other characters from the world of Green Zone and stuff to help flesh it out, with bios on all of the characters, not just the guys that got covered in the original source book. And I'm going to pack it full of everything, like my first drawings of Virgil, everything. That'll be coming out soon after that. And then it'll be several books of Alice. It'd be nice if I could get 6 issues of Alice out this year, but I'm also going to be taking on a few more client books this year just to help even out the cash flow a little bit, and not make things quite so tense as it is doing that, surviving off my own stuff, because it's more profitable to do other people's books.
Well, of course, it actually is profitable because it's not your investment. It's like
I want, if you hire me for a book, I want your book to be successful, and I will do everything I can to make it the best possible book I can put out there. And I will share every post that you want to send me. I will do everything I can to help drive people out there to back it. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, I've already been paid. I want it to be successful because I want you to make money so you can hire me to do the next book. But ultimately, if you're not a good salesman or something, I can't help on the creator side, and some people just don't want to push it that hard, or only push for the Kickstarter and then have no intention of ever selling the book again after that, which blows my mind. I'm like, we're not Marvel. We are unique in the fact that we are always going to be meeting new people at shows and cons that have never heard of us before. And that's a chance to get to sell our books to a whole new person. So, those first 4 issues of Green Zone are always going to be valuable to sell to new people that haven't read it before. And the 4 issues of Caw are always going to have a new audience that they can see. And so why would I not continue to sell those forever instead of just I sold it to the Kickstarter, that's it, I'm done. No, there's always a new fan out there that I can find and make. So I'm going to keep selling them. But yeah, I got off on a tangent there, but
no, that's fine.
I don't understand the logic.
This is what it's about. It's about doing all that. Is there anybody that you are looking forward to collaborating with? Anybody, if you had the opportunity, I guess, to work on anybody's book, whether it's in the independent world or outside of it, is there any,
Oh man, I've gotten to work with so many cool creators already, but there's always so many cool dudes that I would love to work with on projects and stuff. And I'm always interested in jumping on something new and doing something different. I've been teaming up a lot with my buddy T.S. Luther from Can't Be Killed Comics, who's somebody that I met on TikTok. And he sent me some really sweet messages once upon a time saying how much my TikToks had inspired him, and he was, publishing his first comics, and he was really excited about it. And he was thanking me for all of my encouragement through my TikTok videos. And we got to talking and chatting, and he sent me some of his writing, and it was really freaking good. And so good that I got a little mad when I found out he already had an artist illustrating it, because I really wanted to do it myself. I ended up getting to letter the book, but I was a little mad I didn't get to draw it. And that was Hellion and Bash, which just came out on Kickstarter this year and did good. And it's going to be an amazing series. And I started asking him to help edit my stuff, because he's working full time pursuing a career in comics as well. So he has time during the day. He's not at a day job like a lot of other people that I know. And so he had the freedom and the drive and the hunger. And so we started working together, and he's a great writer. He's a great editor. He's got great ideas. I let him write some stuff for me, and now he's parlayed that into 10 books he's putting out through different publishers this year. And he's got his 2025 lined up, man. He's got so much stuff coming out, and I'm going to be doing a book with him as repayment for all the great help he's given me, because he's got a better business mindset than I do, which is the other problem with indie comics. Like, when you have to do it all by yourself, you may not be good at something. Like, you may not be good at the social media aspect. You may not be good at marketing. You may not be good at the business side. You might not be that organized. But I think there's a real opportunity out there for other people that love comics and have always wanted to help, that may not be a writer or an artist, but you're really organized, or you're really good at, figuring out social media and hashtags that are going to get more views on something, or whatever it is. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for people to collaborate and get to be a part of the process, because some of the most valuable people I've seen in any process have been like people that used to be an intern and now work full time for this small publisher. And they're the ones that get everything done, because, the creatives can be creative. And then you got these other people behind the scenes that are the ones that get stuff done, and I'm going to be working with him some, and we're actually talking about working on some pitch packages to pitch up the ladder to some bigger publishers, and see if we can't get some nibbles somewhere to send some of this stuff out and maybe make a little bit more money on it, which would be nice. It would be nice to be able to make a living wage on something, and, maybe be able to stop work after dinner and spend the night with my wife,
Yeah, share the burden a little bit. No, that's great. All right, Fish, we're coming to the end of our show here. So, first off, thank you so much for making the time to be here with us. And,
Absolutely.
I think there's just so much great stuff that's going to be remembered from this interview. So thank you for being here for that. But if you have any last words you want to say, let us know where we can follow you on social media, all those wonderful things. That would be great. But feel free. We got about another minute to go here.
Yeah, I am Mr. Fish Comics on all social media, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Twitch, everywhere. And gomrfish.com will take you directly to the next project that I'm working on. Right now, it takes you to the pre-launch page for Green Zone issue 4, so you could go sign up, gomrfish.com, and that will always take you to the next project. So if you're watching this later down the road, it might be Alice issue 10, but gomrfish.com will take you right there.
Awesome. Fish, thank you so much. I wish you all the best of luck in 2025. I know I'll see you out there, but keep doing what you do, man. You're a big inspiration to me.
As are you to me, man. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Have a great Christmas, and we will be back with another interview very soon. Have a good one.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.